Hey guys, it's Manix here. We're gonna look today at doing a gear service on my Kona Kickapoo here. As you can see, we've got some problems here with our outer gear cable. Pretty nasty. It's not shifting properly. So what we're going to do is change the outer and inner cable, and then I'm going to show you how to go over setting up the derailleur. Now I'm using SRAM derailleur here, but the screws, all the adjustments are exactly the same as on your Shimano, they just might be in different places. So if you've got an issue, I can point that out on the forum. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to release the inner gear cable from the derailleur, that's down here. Undo that screw, unthread the inner. We're not going to use that anymore, that's going in the bin. Okay, and we've got to pop it out at the shifter. Now, SRAM shifters are a little bit of a pain in the backside because you have to remove the shifter to actually get the cable out. So bear with me while I grab the tool for that. Okay, here we go. I've got my Torx piece. That's the tool that SRAM have decided to use for all of their bits and bobs. We're not using Allen keys anymore. It's all Torx. So, as I remove the shifter, we've got this little tab here. Open that up. Oh, good thing to do is to make sure it's in the highest gear, so that would be the smallest cog first. Give that a good tug, and there we go. We've got the cable exposed in there. That could be a little fiddly to get out. But here we go. No, there we go. So that's the inner removed. We're going to just chuck that on the floor for the time being. And we'll put the shifter in my pocket. So what we've got to do first is measure up the new outer cable we're going to be using. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use brake cable because they're actually different. Gear cable is made up of a spiral of little cords of steel, whereas brake cable is more like a big coil on the inside. These have a habit of what you can see here, it just pulling out of the ends, but you won't get that problem with brake cable, so that should do us better. So let's grab our brake cable and start cutting it down to size. Okay, so we're ready to cut down our cable. What you're going to need to make sure is that you've got some really good quality cutters, otherwise you're not going to be able to get through that cable. Now these are cyclo cutters, they've lasted me absolutely ages, and I got these from Halford, so believe it or not, really good source of tools. So we're going to get our cable. Now if I hadn't been an idiot and chucked away that bit of outer we had earlier, I would have just measured it off against that, but seeing as that's gone, what we're going to do is just get an idea of the length, like that. Okay, very rough. There we go. Now, a lot of the newer bikes, they won't have interrupted cable like this. It'll just be one continuous cable front to back, and that does work better. But we don't have that on this old Kickapoo. We've got interrupted cable there. I don't have a clue why they decided to do that. Now, I'm just going to cut away a little bit more of this so that it's nice and neat. And we can get our cable in there nice and easy. So, inside the metal coil there is plastic sleeve to stop it rusting, so that's that. Okay, I'm just going to pop that here for now while we measure up the next section. I'll probably decide to cut a lot of this because you don't really need to see me measuring and cutting cable time and time again. There we go. Just to make sure we open up. Now, bike shops will try and convince you that brake services are something that's worth, you know, £20–30, And in all honesty, they are. If you've not had a go at this before, it could be really tricky and you don't want to mess it up. So if you've got a bike shop that's offering decent rates and you don't fancy doing it yourself, by all means let the bike shop do it. But if you're happy to have a go, and there's no problem with that, just be prepared to have a few goes, because it's not guaranteed to go right first time every time. Okay, that's our cable cut, so we're just going to place all of our little sections of cable where they need to go, and I'm going to get myself the gear inner. So I've got that just over here. Gear inners obviously can only be used for gears. You can't get this confused with brake cable, because it will have a very, very tiny little barrel shaped bit like that on the end. Brake cable have a bit that goes that way, and it's a fair bit larger. So you can't get the two confused, which is handy, because everyone knows us cyclists are fairly simple creatures. No offence. Okay, so now we're just going to be threading through our gear cable. It will thread straight through like that. It might not go that well every time. I've done this a lot, but you'll get there eventually. Pop the little rubber bit shut and reattach your shifter. Now I like running Avid brakes with SRAM gears because you can get this little matchmaker system here, which means I've only got one clamp on my handlebars and that attaches both. And so it does make the handlebars look nice and neat, and I find they're a good combination anyway. Okay, so we're going to if you're using normal gear cable, what you'll want to do is make sure you've got a few of these, and avoid the plastic ones because they can just split open. Try and get your hands on some of the metal ones. They are just that much tougher, and they won't allow the cable to move around quite so much. You don't need them quite so much on the brake cable, and as you can see, the brake cable is actually thicker, so we can't get that on there anyway. But like I said, you won't need them on the brake cable because of the way it's coiled. You're not going to get those little strands of cable pushing through. So that's just going to feed in there. If you're not using brand new cables, a good idea to drop a bit of oil in there. In fact, I'm going to do that anyway, because this bike gets some serious abuse. So we've got our wet lube here. There's really no point using dry lube in this country, so we're just going to put a few drops of that into there, and maybe a tad on the cable. Okie dokie. That won't stay there, that's for sure. As you can see, I've got a bike stand here. It is a lot easier when you've got a bike stand, but you don't need it. If you're not doing the work regularly, they can be picked up fairly cheap, but if you don't do your own work, like I said, there's not a lot of point in having one. Okay, so that sits in there nicely, and again, I didn't make sure that one was open. Let's try and get that in there. There we go. Okay, so for your SRAM derailleurs, once that's all linked up, just make sure there is a little feed down the back here. Just need to make sure that goes in there. And then, oh, sorry camera. If I can find the Allen key, which is in here somewhere. There we go. What we're going to do is make sure, obviously I set the gears so that it'd be in the smallest cog, so we're just going to make sure the derailleur's the same. Pull that cable nice and tight and feed it under the bolt. It's always under the bolt on SRAM, because as you can see there's a little groove, you might not be able to see it, little tiny groove in that plate. So we're just going to make sure that goes under there, and we tighten that up. Nice and tight, just make sure that plate's... Oh dear, oh, it's all gone to pot. Okay, just make sure there's no slack in that cable. As you can see, derailleur will move nice and smoothly. There's a bit of slack there, so we might need to adjust that up in a moment. Okay, next thing is just to make sure we cut off the excess. Don't cut it too much, because you never know when you're going to need to adjust it or even reuse the cables. Okay, if you've got cable ends, little crimps you can put on the end, do it. With these, they've got a little crusher, so once you've got your cable end on there, you can crimp that. I'll probably get one of those on there later. But as you can see, that's it. That is changing a gear cable, inner and outer. It's that easy. And I don't even know how long that took me, not very long. So next we're going to index the rear derailleur, and that, I swear, is just as simple.